because it will always be wanted by everyone.
Thank you, Ian. Pete Adams?
Just piecing together what I believe the gentleman's name was, Max, about having a plan, and then referencing what uh, Administrator Ellison said about we don't even have enough money to get a plan right now in our budget. I say we go with the transportation utility, free up that money, use the freed up money to get a plan for all the stormwater projects, and then proceed from there. So I'm for the transportation utility.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Paul Pfeiffer on.
Oh, I don't know if my internet will work here, but I sent the chat out. I'm much more for the stormwater, but I want it to be done right. So I don't think there's a hurry for it. I mean, if we're to rush it on the referendum and it doesn't pass and we don't do it right, I think that's a risk too big to take. We could do the transportation utility at any time. So I would say, I know they're both very important, but I would say hold off on both of them, get our ducks in a row and do it right. And if it's a year from now, so be it. It's still more than we've done in the past.
So let me be, just to be clear, Paul, you don't want to do either of them at this point? Sorry, no, that's okay. So you don't want to do either the transportation utility or the stormwater utility at this point?
Well, if we were to do, I'll be honest, I'm torn. If we're going to do one, I would do the storm utility, but I would say my ideal situation would be hold off on it and make sure we do it right rather than I feel like rush it in a couple months. But if we're going to do one, do storm utility now.
Okay. Okay, Trina?
My preference is still to make an attempt for the stormwater utility and the ballots this spring. I would like to simultaneously collect more information on the transportation utility to keep that ball rolling. I guess I feel that if the program has any stability whatsoever, it should still be okay to try for that in 6 months.
Usually it's the really stable programs that they take away from you. Like the stormwater utility. No, but I guess, I mean, I don't think I need to ask then what the Mayor Tome would like. So I guess council, so we would like to try then, so I'm for the transportation utility at this point. But that puts us at a sort of deadlock, and you wouldn't.
I'm a member of the council.
Yeah, oh, okay. Well, I already had you down here,
Okay.
so. But all right, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in favor of. I don't think it's fair to say that the transportation utility is something that we're going to be able to create at any time. I don't. I think that as we've talked about already, this could be a dollar for dollar exchange if we decided to do it. Regardless of how popular it is, it may have a better chance because transportation needs are more popular or more widely known in the community versus stormwater. I don't think that, and I'm not saying that the stormwater utility is not important, I just don't think that it's very likely to get it approved this spring. I would be more in favor of maybe looking at a fall election or something where you have a little bit more time between now and then to work on the transportation utility, know that you're getting the funding to do what you need to do, and then educating the public on the stormwater utility and getting that enough space between the two, I guess, to educate the public. But if I had to pick one, it's obviously the transportation utility because I think it's more possible at this moment.
Okay, so,
Can I just say one quick thing?
sure. Go ahead.
So I just want to remind the council that basically all of us were for putting the stormwater utility up for referendum this spring until the transportation utility became an option. None of us were worried about it getting rushed or anything of that nature until we had another option. We did support this at one point in time.
I agree with that, Ian, but we did support this at one point in time, I think, when we thought we had ample time. And I, I don't disagree with that, and I think that most of us also want to support just stormwater funding. However, I think that this last few months has been sort of, for lack of a better term, insane around City Hall, and I do think that we all had the best of intentions of being able to, put together a plan to get this on the April ballot, and it just did not occur that way. So no, I think it would be unrealistic for us to just begin now when, we should have began the process of educating the public sooner. I think that, unfortunately, I don't think it happened by design that time is running out. I think it just happened unfortunately. Alder Reed.
Oh, I would definitely want to have the stormwater on the ballot in the spring. I think people will be more likely to vote for it during the time of melting. Uh, even with all the education, I think chances go down in the fall when people are feeling a little less concerned.
Okay, well, I don't know. We are just, completely split right now. So, I suppose, Kyle, you gave you gave the option of both. What would it look like for both? Like, if we want to do this in 2 months and also push through, like, I think that would be conflicting messages if we tried to do both at the same time.
Yeah, that's my concern, and that's why, essentially that was kind of my recommendation, that we not move forward with both at the same time, because I think it muddies the waters and potentially gives the wrong message about what we're trying to accomplish. Given limited information and misrepresented information, it could look like this is some huge money grab just to fund pet projects, and we're going to do all sorts of frivolous things, when the reality is we're trying to find tools that work around long-established levy restrictions that the state has put upon us. And, these are some potential ways that we can, solve it. So we can go forward with both, but I think it detracts from either one of the solutions, and you're trying to solve different things with each one. One of them kind of tipped the scale for me in that I thought I could accomplish two things with one action. And in that way, sort of my big fear here is that we agree to disagree and don't decide to move in any direction, or move in one in an ill-fated way. And then we end up back here next year wondering why we didn't do anything, because, nothing happens without money.
I think that's our biggest problem is that.
Yeah. One
we
of the
don't have enough
issues
money.
is with stormwater, with roads, we have the data. We've been doing roads for decades. And with stormwater, we don't have the foundation that we really even need. So we're trying to piece it together, but I can't tell you what the first 5 projects are going to be, because we don't really have a list of what those projects are, what they're going to accomplish, and what they're going to cost. Because you need that pot of money to even start that conversation. And we could start that in the next few months if we established a transportation utility, because you would automatically right away start collecting money some point this year. And as long as you collected the same amount as you were planning on spending on transportation anyways, it would be a wash, and you could still make the improvements on the roads, but then immediately start the planning to actually develop, probably with professional engineering assistance, a realistic plan of what we want to do and where we want to do it and what it's going to accomplish. Right now, we're selling it with what we have, which is a study that was done in 2008 or subsequent to 2008, which was a great study, but it wasn't intended to be, an actual detailed a recommendation of what your projects would be and what they would cost. So, that's, I think, where we're struggling is we're developing this on our own without a lot of background because there's not enough resources right now to have the background available.
Alder Adams.
Okay, so after listening to what Kyle just said, would members of the council be okay with approving the transportation utility now using the funds generated from the transportation utility to research what stormwater utility projects are necessary and then go from there either in the fall? Because it sounds like we could have that money pretty quick and maybe have a list generated of what projects would take what the priorities in the fall. Would that be something that would be worthwhile?
Sorry, I still think you're confused on how we can spend that transportation money. It can't be spent on that. It would only free up funds that we could potentially spend.
Correct. It would free up those funds. The transportation utility would free up the funds from the general fund that we can use then to research the stormwater utility projects.
Or they could be used for anything else that the council decides at that point in time as well.
Yes, Ian, but I think also what needs to also be said is that the council supports funding stormwater. Yourself, you are going to be on council for another year and a half. I think there's plenty of time to advocate for what you want for stormwater funding. Paul Pfeiffer.
Seems that we seem to be spinning our wheels here. Is there any chance of tabling this and bring it back to the town next week or in 2 weeks, and so we have more time to discuss this? It doesn't seem like we're getting anywhere right now.
I think the only issue is, and why I guess we're still spinning our wheels, is that we have to, if we are going to do a stormwater utility for April's ballot, stormwater utility question, we need to submit paperwork in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so the language has to be submitted. I'm not actually as worried about the creation of the language, but when you create that and submit it, we're locked in. We're going to
Right.
referendum. There's no deciding in February or March that we're not. Once you do that, you're locked in. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be unusual to have a referendum that you decided later on. Don't worry how you vote. We're not going to do whatever the decision was. So I mean, that's really the short-term impetus is we have to make a decision if we want to be on the April ballot. If we want to take our time, we can keep the stormwater utility on the agenda and, move forward at a different time when you would pick a future election date to hit.
So we have 2 weeks. If that's the direction that council wants to go, we would have to decide that at the next meeting, and then it would be immediate if that was the case. What's the date that we have to, just out of curiosity, I can't.
I think there's the potential, I think, where you could squeeze in a special meeting. You have to be 70 days before the election date, and I don't know if anyone has that date. The last regular opportunity to approve that language would be in 2 weeks. I think there would be a few more days for a special meeting. Mm-hmm. Again, the language probably isn't the issue as much as it is the commitment to moving forward with it and the assumption that you're going to have real actionable information, to educate the public about what you're going to accomplish with this. Sure. So that's kind of the time crunch.
Okay, what's the will of the council? What is council, do we just want to table this as Paul suggested?
I think we need to do something now. If it would make sense to everyone else and it's something actionable that we could do, if we move forward with the transportation utility, like it seems a lot of people want, could we simultaneously put in, we'll know how much the transportation utility generates. Can we allocate that exact amount of money out of the general fund to discovering and moving forward with wastewater, stormwater? So if it generates 300 grand, can we do something actionable to commit 300 grand to stormwater?
Go ahead. Ken.
No, given the setup that we have right now, that's not how it would work. What you would free up is on the calculation sheet. The 2021 budget has about $95,000 in it for contracted road maintenance, which is again the mill and overlay and slurry seal. If you did the transportation utility, you would know how much you're going to collect based on the month you started collecting it, and as long as you collected that amount of money from the utility, which would take about 3 months or so, give or take. So if we started that by summer or fall, you would have enough to do the projects that we normally do, so transportation wouldn't be delayed. At the same time, you would be able to, even by a resolution, rededicate that $95,000 in the general fund to stormwater study or whatever you wanted to do with this council right here. I mean, we could make that decision in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or, anytime in the very near term and commit that $95,000. The $300,000, the benefit of it is it's new money going to transportation. So it's not just taking the $300,000 from the general fund and moving it. It's actually, freeing up maybe that 95, but collecting, basically an additional 2 times more for a total of triple what we're currently allocating.
Right, so long story short, 95,000 is the maximum amount of money it will free up in our budget.
Correct.
Stormwater, so it can't even free up anywhere near what it's generating, which is what I think a lot of the other council members have been kind of under the assumption that it was freeing up that amount of money, but in reality it frees up $95,000 to potentially maybe use towards stormwater.
Correct, and it would be up to the decision of the council. We could. I'm very certain Jason Letha could have a task order ready for the next meeting that would commit us to spending those monies that we could immediately sign and obligate us to spend that money, and we could make that contingent upon the transportation utility. We can lock ourselves in, kind of as tightly as we want.
So with that new information,
I have
oh, sorry,
Yeah,
Mayor Tome.
if this might help put some, make people a little bit more comfortable, one thing I've been thinking about, in recent weeks is projects that I feel like I need to complete or finish before April. And one of those is the Roadmap 2050 planning process. I've pretty much been, one of the few people that were here at the beginning of the process and the one that's left at the end, but we need to approve the Roadmap 2050 plan through resolution. I have talked to a few people about, how to finish this up, and I think the one problem that I have with the executive summary is that we went through a change in city administrator. I've kind of been the only person that has been involved in the process from start to finish. So I feel that it's very important to have language that's very relevant to the planning process and the outcomes that's relevant to the plan, I guess. But what we could do to put people at ease is to look at the roadmap and then actually change some of the numbers in the budget. If we're planning on borrowing $500,000 every other year for street reconstruction, that was the plan that we put together 6 months ago or a year ago. If there's a transportation utility, those numbers can change. They can be allocated to stormwater projects, and I think that can be reflected in the roadmap project before it's adopted this spring, if that helps kind of put people at ease. It shows a long-term commitment and recommendation to future city council members as well.
One quick question, Mayor. How long has it been that the city was saying that we were to spend the 500,000 on roads?
That's been a recommendation since before I've been here. I believe it's around 2010, 2011 is when it was a recommendation made then. I think that there were some assumptions that were put into the numbers on the roadmap that exceeded that $500,000, knowing that you get less road every year with the increased costs. But that's built into the 30-year plan is borrowing essentially every other year.
Right, and no offense, but if we say we're going to spend X amount of money every year or every other year on stormwater, how will it be any different than the money that we've said we would spend on roads that we haven't?
I think the only obstacle to spending the money on the roads is that, you know, you have a borrowing capacity. You can't just borrow $500,000 every single year and not have that ding your debt levy. And I think we've been trying to, you know, deal with reality. You know, how much are we levying every year for street reconstruction or maintenance? And I think this allows us to free up those funds by not borrowing so much.
Administrator Ellison.
I also think when you look at say the Hibbert Street project and the money for the general fund expenses, so we're not talking utility work, but we're talking stormwater and streets, that's $1.4 million. Then you look at $95,000 in the budget this year. So we're at $1.5 million on road expenditures. That's 3 years worth of that $500,000. And so, you know, I think when we look at that number of how much you hit per year, it's probably not realistic to say you're going to spend it every single year, but on average, you will, because the projects, we don't do Hibbert in 4-block increments. You
Right.
do the whole project all at once, take a large lump sum. So, you know, there has been significant infrastructure spending, you know, probably more in the last 10 years than maybe the 10 years before that. But even at that rate, we're still coming up, I think, you know, less than what we intended. So we have been meeting the 500 probably, but it's hard to tell year over year when you're doing large projects that exceed it by 2 or 3 times that annual amount.
Well, I mean, I guess my only thing I have left to do is if anybody wants to either change their position now, or if we want to table this issue and bring it back to the next cow. I'm going to go around and ask what your preference is one more time. Just let me know if you want to do the stormwater utility or the transportation utility, or if you'd like to table. Mike McCabe.
I'm still, you know, I'm obviously in favor of both, but I'm leaning towards the transportation utility.
Okay, thank you. Ian?
I really feel like the transportation utility, even if it had to go to referendum later, just because it doesn't now, would find support almost any time. And stormwater utility is something that we really need, and I believe we need both, but I really don't want to give up going for a stormwater utility. It's something that our community needs.
I don't think that, Ian, I'm sorry, I just want to chime in here. I don't think many people disagree with you here. I think the main thing I disagree with, and most of us that are in disagreement, is the timeline. But I mean, I think the timeline is too rushed, and I think but that's my 2 cents. Okay, so you're still stormwater utility in April.
My big problem is if we adopt the transportation utility, we're going to have to wait quite a while before we can adopt or even send a stormwater utility to referendum. Because once we have another utility on their tax bill, on their utility bills, they're not going to support a referendum for stormwater until they see at least some of the fruit of the transportation utility. And that's not going to happen for at least a year plus. It's not like we're going to get this money in and all of a sudden all of our roads are going to be fixed. It's going to take time for the community to see the fruits of the transportation utility. So if we adopt the transportation utility, we won't be able to go for the stormwater utility viably for quite some time in the future. And we will be flooding many times before then.
And we will have more money overall. And that's my
Maybe
2
to
cents.
use for it. We
But
have
overall.
$95,000 in the budget this year that could maybe be used for it. There's nothing saying that it would be.
Correct, but that's,
$95,000.
and the issues on Parkview were estimated you said $85,000 at you were talking about $85,000 earlier, Kyle.
No, I know that when they had come forward before, they had suggested that there was some, smaller scale improvements that could be made that would alleviate some of the problems. I think when you're looking at the grander scheme, it probably does take a longer time span and some good planning to say, okay, let's fix these high point simple things, but then long term, is that really adequate enough? Is that robust of a response enough? And likely your answer is no. You're still going to have to do more planning, more investment over a longer period of time for maybe larger improvements. I just thought with $85,000, we accomplished a lot in Second Ward Creek in 1 year.
Gotcha.
If we start doing that in consecutive years, I think you could really accomplish a lot over time.
Thank you. Okay, Peter Adams.
I maintain the transportation.
Okay. Paul Piperon.
Maintain, unfortunately, it's still a table, I'm sorry.
Okay. Trina.
I still prefer to try to get a referendum through this spring. If we don't get it through the spring and then put up a transportation utility, I don't think people will be ready by next spring for the idea of, just something else, just another utility. I think it's just such a small window for trying to ask the public.
Okay. And Mayor Tome.
I still think transportation is the most possible.
Okay. I've got 3 transportations, 2 stormwaters, and 1 table. Not including myself. I am a transportation, but that still leaves us pretty deadlocked. So I think our only option is essentially to table this until I guess 2 weeks from now would be.
Look, if the only option is to table it in 2 weeks, then the stormwater becomes completely irrelevant anyway. So if there is zero support, or not enough support for the stormwater, then I would like to propose we go forward with the transportation with the caveat that $95,000 is locked into stormwater.
So you'd like to move forward with the transportation, and then propose, like Kyle suggested, we actually develop a resolution that we are going to use the funds that are coming from that transportation, or reallocate the general funds that the transportation utility is providing for transportation purposes, and reallocate general funds to stormwater. I think I would be in support of that, and I think that's the easiest way to kind of.
Yeah,
I would be okay with that.
I would prefer something to happen than nothing, and that at least gets something done, so.
Thank you, Ian. Am I seeing any other nodding? Trina, you said you're okay with that?
I'll change my opinion and I'll agree with, Alder Gray.
All right. I think we're getting a transportation utility. Wow, that's exciting. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you for, I mean, that was a really long discussion, but I think ultimately, I think we're all wanting the same things. It's just what tools we're going to use to get there. And I wish I could have it all too, but Mayor Tome.
I thank you for getting a firm consensus, because there's just no way to move this as it was two weeks forward, and picking a direction at the regular meeting would be impossible. So I think it's
I
good to
concur.
get to some consensus. I think that we had the Rupert Milky engineers, we put them to sleep for about an hour, and
Sorry,
we
guys.
just woke them
Sorry.
up.
All right. All right, now we can move on then to number 12, which is convene to close session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investment of public funds, or conducting other public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically to discuss potential acquisition of parcels in the city of Columbus. We will not be
Chair,
taking.
I'll move to
Oh.
convene to closed session for the reasons read.
Adam, seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to convene to closed session. Pat, could you please take the roll?
Gray,
Aye.
McCabe,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Tome,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. We will not be returning to the air this evening, so thank you for joining us. No further action will be taken.